All right, let's dive into a really fascinating piece of history today. We're looking at this incredibly fierce, incredibly formal, but also absolutely brutal exchange of letters between two rival presidents, right in the thick of one of South America's most devastating conflicts, the Paraguayan War. But before we even get to the letters themselves, I want you to hold a number in your head. 50,000. That's the number of Paraguayan men who were lost before the main Allied invasion of their country had even really kicked off. It's a staggering figure, and it really frames everything else we're about to talk about. So let's set the scene. It's late 1865. Paraguay's initial push has been beaten back. Their army is now back on home soil, digging in, and on the other side of the border, you've got this massive Allied force. Argentinians, Brazilians, Uruguayans, all gathered and ready to deliver what they hope will be a final knockout blow. Now, to really get inside the heads of these leaders at this exact moment, you have to understand just how catastrophic the opening phase of the war was for Paraguay. But the reason for that devastation, well, it might not be what you think. You look at those 50,000 early casualties, and you'd think, wow, the fighting must have been brutal. And it was, but that's not the whole story. Not even close. The vast majority of those losses, a staggering 60%, that's 30,000 men, died from disease. We're talking epidemics of dysentery, smallpox, and measles just tearing through the army camps, claiming far, far more lives than enemy cannons or rifles ever did. So, okay, your army is being decimated by sickness. You're facing an overwhelming invasion force. What do you do? How does Paraguay's leader, President Francisco Solano López, reach out to his main rival, Argentine President Bartolomé Mitre? With a desperate plea for peace? Maybe? A negotiation? Yeah? Not exactly. Instead of suing for peace, López goes on the attack, but with his pen. On November 20th, 1865, he sends this formal, incredibly sharp letter to President Mitre. And in it, he accuses the Allies of fighting a completely dishonorable war. And this quote right here, it gets to the absolute heart of his argument. He's painting a picture. He's the defender of civilization, of the proper rules of war. And the Allies? He casts them as bloodthirsty barbarians, bent on extermination. He's essentially saying, I'm fighting a gentleman's war, and you are savages. And he doesn't just make vague claims. Oh no, he gets very, very specific. He lays out this whole list of alleged atrocities, executing wounded prisoners, forcing captives to turn traitor and fight for the other side, even selling prisoners into slavery. He's building a detailed legal and moral case that his enemies have abandoned any and all codes of honor. And then López drops the hammer. He finishes with a clear ultimatum. He demands that Mitre and the Allies knock it off with these barbaric acts immediately. And if they don't, he warns, every Allied citizen in Paraguay, prisoner or not, is going to face the most rigorous reprisal. It's a direct and very chilling threat. You can just imagine President Mitre getting this letter, because only 5 days later he sends his reply. And let me tell you, if López's letter was a spark, Mitre's rebuttal was a full-blown firestorm of denial and counter-accusation. Mitre does not waste a single second. His opening shot just completely dismisses every single thing López said. He calls the claims either totally false or twisted, blaming them on what he calls passionate and supposed reports. He's basically saying López's intelligence is garbage, and he's rejecting the entire premise of the letter. But Mitre doesn't just play defense. Not at all. He takes every accusation and he flips it right back on López. For every charge, he has a countercharge. López says the Allies are barbarians. Mitre says Paraguayan forces are looting towns and burning homes. López says the Allies enslave prisoners. Mitre says his forces are taking women and children hostage. It's a total, I know you are, but what am I, on an international scale. And what about that very specific charge, the one about forcing Paraguayans to fight their own countrymen? Well, Mitre had a clever answer for that one too. He claimed that any Paraguayan prisoner who joined his army did it voluntarily. Why? To escape what he called the horrible tyranny of López's rule. So in Mitre's story, he's not a conqueror, you see. He's a liberator. Okay, so we've got this war of words. Two presidents, both pointing fingers, both claiming the moral high ground. But what was really going on? What was the reality like on the ground inside President López's own camp at the very moment he was writing these letters about the rules of civilized warfare? And this is where the story just takes a really dark twist. It turns out that 3 days before López even sent his letter threatening reprisals, he had already ordered them to begin. All foreign nationals from the Allied countries living in Paraguay were rounded up and literally put in irons. His threat wasn't a warning of what might happen. It was a description of a reality he had already created. The atmosphere in López's camp was just thick with paranoia. I mean, get this. A sergeant makes some completely innocent small talk with a foreign engineer. López gets wind of it, fears a plot, and has the entire conversation written down word for word. The next morning, before sunrise, that sergeant is dragged out and shot for conspiracy. And every other soldier in his guard unit, they're each given 100 lashes, just for being there. And this kind of horrifying brutality wasn't just for soldiers. A young woman, a civilian from an Argentine city, had followed the army. When she tried to go home, she was caught, and for her crime, she was publicly whipped, 60 lashes on her bare skin. And the source notes, with just a chilling sense of grimness, that this event was actually considered great entertainment by those who watched. But here's the wild thing. Amidst all that cruelty and paranoia inside the camp, out on the actual front line, the Paraguayan soldiers themselves were incredibly, unbelievably bold. In early 1866, they launched these daring, lightning-fast raids across the river, hitting the Allies hard before just melting away, sometimes right under the nose of the powerful Brazilian fleet. The Battle of Corrales is a perfect example of this. I mean, look at these numbers. A small Paraguayan force, just a few hundred men, attacks a much larger Allied unit. The result? The Allies suffer 900 casualties. The Paraguayans? Just 170. It was a stunning, tactical victory that just goes to show how ferocious and effective the Paraguayan soldier could be, even as their nation was facing these impossible odds. And this brings us right back to that central tension, doesn't it? On one hand, you have two leaders writing these eloquent, formal letters about the laws of war, about national honor and who is civilized and who is not. And on the other hand, at the exact same time, you have arbitrary executions, public floggings, and soldiers dying by the tens of thousands from disease and brutal close-quarters combat. It really leaves you wondering, when leaders engage in a war of words and trade accusations of barbarism, who is it that always ends up paying the ultimate price in blood?